many people here? One, two, three. Awesome. Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome to our webinar today. My name is Maria. I'm here with Stephanie and Job, and we're going to be talking to you guys about our there's different paths to success because there's no right path, right? There's no one right way. There's many different ways to bring success to your children. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I just want the okay from my team before we start. Should we wait a few more minutes for people or should we go ahead and get started? And also, if you have any questions at all, just feel free to drop them in the chat as we go along. Happy to read them out loud and answer them when we can. All right. Okay. Then let's get started first. All right. So I'm just going to be introducing some people. I guess maybe Job, you can introduce yourself.
Hello สวัสดีค่ะ My name is Job นะคะ um so I've been working uh for EduSmith as a boarding school strategist for more than 10 years. Actually, like I founded the company myself too. With so my as for my background, I went to Kate School in California, which is a boarding school in the US, and got my bachelor's and master's degree from Stanford universities in economics and management science and engineering. So nothing related to education. This is like out of my passion to like bring like good things, right, like to Thailand. And hopefully uh, I it has always been my hope and my wish to like help parents realize like what's like the kids potential, helping them find like the right path. And like as Varia mentioned earlier, there's no right or wrong answer. We just have to make sure like we know our kids really well, and we make well informed decisions. So that's also like what EduSmith is doing and has been doing for more than 10 years. Yes.
Okay. That's me. So I am a boarding school counselor and as well as a strategist. Here I've coached students to Thai medical schools before, US boarding schools, and also universities. And I'm also a reading writing instructor here at EduSmith. So if you're ever interested about boarding school, you're probably going to see the space a lot coming into EduSmith. So yeah. So I want to maybe just introduce EduSmith as a company for people who's never come to us, never heard of us before, right? So we are Thailand's leading education consultancy, and our experience really guides us to our motto, which is the right fit and authenticity, right? So we really, really believe in having the right fit, and so does Stephanie, which is why it's so good to have all of us together here, giving all this knowledge to parents because we believe that, right fit means success. So we do help students through all stages of their life. So in their educational life, that is, we start with the boarding school program, and then we also help students with undergraduate programs for US, UK, Canada, you name it, we'll help you. And then, if you're done with college and you still want to continue education, we got the MBA and master's program as well. And so within all of that, we have our counselors that work with our students. We have test prep programs. We have profile coaching to really bring out the best in your children and to help schools and admissions see, all the wonderful things about them in their profiles, in their academics, in their reading and writing. So that's what we really do here at EduSmith. And so our US boarding school counseling program, we kind of divide it into three parts. We have the test prep program, the counseling program, and then the coaching program. The counseling is the main bulk of what really happens when we start applying, but you can really start as early as sixth grade to prep for SSAT classes, TOEFL classes, even reading and writing classes. That's where the coaching program comes in with skill development, making sure that students have, the right activities that is right for them. exploring their interests, making sure that their writing and reading skills are up to where it needs to be, regardless if you're applying to boarding school or not. And so we can start from sixth grade and then we can go all the way till eighth grade or even ninth grade if you're applying to 10th grade. And this is a very, very brief timeline of the whole program that we work with. And so, well, what is in the program, right? So we have the pre-application profile development. This is when my team and I sit down with your family, with your son or daughter, and we're sitting there and we're like, okay, well, let's take a look at the timeline. You're coming in at sixth grade or seventh grade. How much time do we really have, right? How do we build this profile up? How do we even like think about like, well, you're a great swimmer, but you also want to try the trombone. Do we have time to try the top trombone? Absolutely. We usually really do have a lot of time. Test prep strategies. Is it too early to do SSAT test classes right now? Or maybe we need to really crunch it in, right? And then, of course, UMass boarding school research, trying to find the right schools. And then, of course, teacher recommendations and application strategies. Then we also look into application counseling, right? And this is when the bulk of the work is really done in terms of making sure that they're telling the stories that best reflect who they are and the stories they want to tell. And so a lot of students will say, well, I don't have anything interesting in my life. You do. You guys have a lot of really interesting things to talk about. So we work and spend a lot of time with your student, with your son and daughter, asking them the questions and getting all the best and fun personalities out of them from them onto the paper. And of course, we don't write anything for them. We want them to be really proud of the work they do, but we definitely help with the brainstorming and the editing the final drafts. We also do parent statements because that's also an essay component of the application, helping parents write and show the best sides of their son or daughter. And we really help them from the application start until the end. We also do one-on-one interview preps, making sure all the applications are done. And if there's any financial document or other documentations that needs to be sent in, we have those as well. So these are our previous lists of results, and we have more coming. We actually have more than this, but this is just the last 2 years. So we have a variety of schools. We have the big schools, small schools, single gendered schools. So again, we can really help students with whatever school is the right school for them. And I'll hand it over to Stephanie, and then you can introduce yourself and your work.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much, EduSmith, to Kunjab and Kunvaria and the whole team for inviting me to join this webinar. I am an education consultant based in Singapore, actually, although I do a lot of work with Thai students. This is actually a second career for me. So I used to be a lawyer, and then I had kids, and then they went through these school applications, and I realized that I really enjoyed working with kids, working with parents, finding the right fit. So very much a similar philosophy to EduSmith and to Kunjab and why she started up EduSmith. So back in the day when I was in boarding school myself, I actually realized that a lot of my friends were not happy in school. That their parents had just said, "Oh, this is the best school, or it's the school with the best results. So we're going to send you there." And they were not very happy there. And so my mission really by starting up this education consultancy is to find the best fit of school for a child, because we realize that when they are in the right place, they really thrive. And this is so important for their confidence, for their mental, well-being. And it's been pretty good. So I started up in 2014. I've actually advised many, many students. I don't have a list, unfortunately, of the schools that my students have gone to, but I can be quite proud in saying that they're most of the top schools in the UK. And I've been doing this since then. So that's one of the things that I do, education consultancy. And then the other thing that I do is in the midst of advising parents, I actually realized that it was very hard to keep track of when the schools were coming out from the UK to this part of the world. So I came up with the idea to set up the BESSA School Show. So I curate the show. Not any school can come to BESSA. They have to be of a certain academic standing. They have to have something to offer. So typically the schools that come are sort of really within the top sort of 30, 50 schools in the UK. And the idea is that the school show is not only curated, but we always have the admission directors coming or even the heads. So we have very like senior staff who are coming out here, and it's free admission. It's for parents to have the opportunity to meet the schools face to face and to connect with them directly. Of course, if they need help, they can come to me. But really, my mission with BESSA is to bring access to parents based here so that they can, get in touch with the schools and to find out more and not to make the mistake of just sending a kid to a school without having properly researched why that school, and really doing everything that you need to make sure it's a good fit for your child.
So I will kind of be here facilitating, but I'll start with you guys, and maybe I'll start with Stephanie first. So I think a lot of parents, when they look at schools, obviously the first thing is academics. So if you can just tell us, like, what is an academic system like in the UK boarding schools?
Yeah, so I think a lot of Thais might be quite familiar with it because of some of the international schools here, like Bangkok Patana, for example. They have followed the British curriculum for a long, long time. So British boarding schools follow the IGCSEs, which is done at the end of grade 10, year 11. And then they do a 2-year sixth form, which is either A levels or IB. They after the IGCSEs are done, so that's when they're about 16 years old, they do narrow down quite considerably. So A levels, you're going to be doing 3, maximum 4 topics. For the IB, your HLs are going to be 3, and then you do SLs another 3, but in less depth. So you do narrow down quite quickly, and I think the reason for that is that traditionally the UK universities, well, they still do, the courses are very subject specific. So the idea is that A levels are going to prepare you for that economics degree or that maths degree. So they do go quite deep. Yeah.
Yeah, agree. And I think that's actually like the first thing that I would ask a lot of parents to consider when they like still like exploring like the different systems, like which is the right fit. I think like the idea of sending your kids to a boarding school is like pretty much the same, right? Like to have the kids being more disciplined, to help them be able to like be independent and like motivated, to be able to meet with like a more competitive pool of students, right? So that you're more motivated and are like exposed to like different resources in a wide area of like opportunities. But like I think if you actually delve deep into like the main difference, I would say like this is like the main difference between the two systems. It would actually come back to like the type of curriculum and how the academics is structured, because philosophically, like the two systems are quite different. As Stephanie said, like the UK system would encourage your kids to like really find out like what your subject passions is and like your passion subjects and like the classes that you like to focus on, and like really focus on what you can do really well to prepare you for like the college level coursework and all that. But like with the US, they believe in like having the students sort of like exposed to like like the liberal education, meaning like, okay, you have to do math, you have to do like all the core subjects like English, humanity, social science, art, and all that. And then once you're exposed to all these courses, you get to choose what you want to do later on. So you're required to take a lot more classes, as in like 7 classes, sometimes like 7 blocks and all that. And they believe in like they like with the US system, sometimes like with college level, they don't really require you to like really declare your major when you're in high school, right? Like versus like the UK system, you have to know, sort of know like what you want to be and what you want to study. And but like the US system, sometimes they believe that okay, you can actually start specializing when you are in graduate school. So quite late in the year, like in your pathway. So they ask you to do like a lot more courses, and they really make sure like you, even though you're like a STEM kid, you need to do well in English. And like if you want to go deeper into STEM, then you get to like select more advanced courses later on. So that's the difference. And also like one of the things that I like to highlight is like sometimes like the format of the class and like the assessment might be different. The UK, right, as Stephanie said, right, it's very like focused on exams and grades from the assessment. But like with the US system, sometimes you're required to like write paper, work on group project. Some classes might not have you do the tests. It's like a different format. So it really depends on the type of learner your kid is and which system they're going to thrive best.
Yeah, I mean, I would add as well that the exams take a big part, is actually a big part of British boarding schools. They're kind of obsessed with testing and exams. So even before you go there, they assess you by taking a test. And then every year, every term, you take tests. And then, of course, the GCSEs are very rigorous exams. You have to take 10 subjects typically, and whatever exam results you get for those is going to dictate what you may then be able to do for your A levels, and actually may have an impact further on with your university entrance. So the exams can be quite stressful for some kids. Like if your child is not very comfortable under the stress of taking exams. I mean, some kids thrive, some kids don't. And if they don't, you might just want to consider a system that doesn't rely everything on the exam results, which is pretty much what the UK, does.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to add very quickly because I just got off a phone call like 30 minutes before the webinar started with a mom whose kid is first year at a US boarding school, and she said, "Oh my God," she called me kind of upset because she didn't expect that her speech, like a formal oral presentation, would be such a big part of the grade. And that was like a big shock to her. So definitely like different styles of learning depending on like what, because some kids are really good test takers, right? And some kids really love like absorbing all the knowledge, reconsolidating it into like one final package for that test, right? And then some kids just like, I want to write essays and do projects and do like group discussions with my friends, which is also a grade, right? Like a lot of US boarding schools will have something called the Harkness system, where you sit around a group of a table and then you discuss basically. So it's not as like, the UK be thriving in this, in the sense of like the teacher is like teaching you, they're in front of the classroom, you're getting that very clear instruction, and kids love that. And then some kids are like, actually, I want to go read Romeo and Juliet on my own, and then I'll come back and discuss what I think about it with my teachers and my peers. So I would say, how would you guys say this? Like, how do we start to look for differences in like learning styles for our kids to maybe spot like what's a better system? Yeah. Yes, Stephanie, maybe you can go first. Like, how do you advise parents to approach ways to look for this?
Sorry?
Sure. How would you advise parents to maybe figure out which learning system is the best for their child?
Right. Okay. If purely from the academic point of view, I think it would be, stress of exams, I think is a big one. I think it's also like whether you think it's, because like I think for UK boarding schools, they do place an emphasis on the academics, but they also place a lot of emphasis too on the holistic education and also what you learn outside of the classroom. So I think I would say that it's not just about the academics. It's also about how they would approach sort of learning also in other ways. So, we talk here about the super curriculum. So a lot of the UK boarding schools have something called a super curriculum, which is not just what you learn in the syllabus. In fact, that's kind of like what you need to do to pass the exam, but they're not interested in that because that's just a given. So it's also about what you want to learn outside of the syllabus. So they might, for example, have a lot of clubs and societies and invite speakers to come and speak to the kids. So it's like, are you looking for that for your child? If you are and they're interested in that, then I'd say this kind of education is very good, like a UK boarding school. Otherwise, you might as well just keep them in, a very kind of just plain vanilla day school where they're just going to sit and pass the tests.
Yeah. What about you, Job? How would you say like is a good maybe factors to look for your kids? Like what kind of system would they be best just academically?
I feel like the students who like to still go broad, right? Like with the subjects, like if they're interested in a lot of subjects, like they don't want to specialize in one thing, one area, like the US system might be more suitable. Why, like there are some kids that I've known like who are very, very good at math and like science and robotics, and they don't want to do much of like I mean, later on when they're older, right? Like in high school, like in sixth form, for example, they want to focus less on, like reading, like, I mean, humanity, English, like they can make, like, for those who know themselves well, like what subjects they want to focus on, like maybe the British system is more suitable as well. So I think that's also the one thing. Like, but both systems would require your kids to be very, I would say like very academic, very intellectual. Like they need to be able to read, they need to be able to write well, communicate their thoughts well, like and work hard. So that's the common like we talk about like a lot of differences, but that's like also the common thing that they have to have in like when they're going to a boarding school, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, let's move on because I think a lot of parents, this is a big investment setting your son or daughter so far away from you, not in your own home anymore. And a lot of times they're thinking about long term, right? So university pathways and outcomes. Maybe Job, you can start with this on like what is the
Mm.
outcome for US schools usually?
Yeah, I think my thoughts, I mean, my opinion on this would be like either system would be able to send your kids to like all the systems in the world. So it's possible. Like what I'm saying is like the students who go to like the US schools, if they don't find themselves like fit with the system, they can actually like move to the UK, right? Like vice versa for the students who attend like the UK boarding schools, if they want to go to the US, Canada, or other countries, they can do so. So that's actually the good thing about the two pathways. Like you can be wherever you want to be, but with some extra preparation, right? Like with the US schools, like their curriculum would be um, like if you want to go to the UK schools, like with the US high school grades, you might need to take like some extra AP exams to really show them like, okay, this is the equivalent to like the A level, but all of these can be taken into consideration by the like the college admissions counselors. So I would say, but practically like the students who go to the US schools, they their pathway would also lead them to like applying to the universities in the US or in Canada. Like not a lot of students would go to the UK. I think it's also like because of um the familiarity of like the system already and stuff that they're looking for, but it's possible for them to move. That's like my
Yeah. I
recommendation.
mean, I would say as well in the UK schools, the bread and butter of UK schools is to send their students to UK universities. I mean, this is what they do year in and year out, and they're very familiar with it. So that is really sort of what they do well.
Mm,
And when I spoke about the super curriculum, this was really built around that. It's like, this is what we need to do to get our students into the top British universities. But then recently, I've actually found that there's a trend of students applying to top US schools, because ultimately, and I think this is also the mission of these boarding schools, is they want good results for their students. So they will do whatever they can for their students to get into the top universities anywhere in the world. So if you want to apply to Stanford, Yale, etc., from a UK boarding school, you can bet your bottom dollar that the school is going to do what they can to help your student get in. And so in the last decade, I've definitely seen many boarding schools in the UK develop their US or North America counselors. So they actually have dedicated staff now who would take your child and support them through that application. Some of them have actually become SAT test centers, so your student can actually do the test right in school. But not just to North America. I'm also seeing a lot of interest now in Europe as well, as some of the European universities are starting to teach in English, like for example, Bocconi in Italy. Some of the students are coming back to Asia as well, particularly medics, like doctors who might want to, have to come back to Thailand, that kind of thing. So the school will really support the student as best they can. I've really never seen a situation where a school is like, oh, why do you want to apply there? No, we don't do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Like with the US system too, like the counseling process, like they would start like very early on, like from grade 9, there would be like a very clear journey on what you have to do in order to prepare yourselves for like the different systems. But yeah, mainly the focus would be on like, getting them into like the US schools. But if you want to go to the UK, like they would advise you to take like, sufficient AP credits for you to use those grades and scores to apply to like schools in the UK. And with the preparation process, I think a lot of time it would also come back to like what type of environment you put your kids into, right? If it's like the environment where like a lot of the friends are talking about like colleges and preparation early on, since like they're very, very motivated, the process would also shift to like earlier. This is what I noticed too. Like when you are in, say, like grade 9, grade 10, and people already start talking about like, oh, I have to take like the SAT, I have to start visiting colleges. I need to think about like what type of majors I want to be. Like all of these things would also shape your kids' mindset and attitude towards like the good preparation, and that's actually what they're known for. And I would say this is also one of the perks of sending your kids to a boarding school, right? Like the school is also very focused on helping your kids too, but at the same time your friends will also help motivate your kids to like, okay, this is what you have to do, right?
Yeah, I think that for sure is the case in a British boarding school. Like, I remember when my daughter was there and she was applying. She wasn't really enamored with Oxbridge. I don't know why, but all her friends were applying. So basically, she says, "Well, everyone's applying, so I'll just put an application." So she put an application. So I think you get pulled along with the tide, which is great. If you're in a good school, you want your child to be pushed to the top as well.
Yeah. I think what I'm getting here from both of you guys is that both system, first of all, really cares about your kid. So like wherever path, whatever, whatever schools, countries they want to apply to, they're definitely gonna, to some sort of extent, personalize the system for them, right? Like, okay, if you're gonna go to the UK,
Exactly.
you're in a US school,
Personalization.
what can we do to help you get there, right?
Right.
And so like, and I feel that most schools are very much like that wherever you are for a boarding case, because they know that you're not there with them and they are also a guardian of the student, so they have to try their best, right? I have an example of this was I have a student in the US system. This is when we were applying for Thai's program, like Thai medical programs. And so her college counselor was actually very open. And she's like, oh, you're working with this counselor in Thailand? Let her email me. And then we ended up working together because they don't have that expertise in Thai medical schools, super niche, right? But then that ended up being like a partnership because at the end of the day, we're both trying to do the best that we can for a student. And that's like a philosophy of any good school is that you should be looking for that. So yeah. Now let's look at admissions. So you're kind of like, okay, you guys convinced us. How do we get in? Maybe Stephanie, you can start with this one for us.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a difficult one because I'm going to say that every school has its own admission process, which is very, very annoying. So if you're applying to like 6 different schools, there's going to be 6 different dates. And actually, part of my job is to help parents to stay on top of those timelines and not and not miss any. But generally speaking, I would say that for every entry point, other than year 9, grade 8, it would be you're looking at the assessments would take place about a year before. So in the autumn/fall of the year before entry. So you really want to start looking for schools about 18 months to 24 months before that, before you actually start school, because you need a bit of time to go and visit the schools, make your school list, etc. So the only exception to this is if you are applying for year 9, grade 8 entry, which is the 13 plus entry point, because that's the most competitive point of entry, especially if they are like the top boys schools or top co-ed schools. And in that case, they are actually testing the kids in year 6, which is grade 5. So in the autumn of grade 5, 3 years before your child is going to start boarding, they have to do tests and interviews. And there's a few rounds as well. So there's the first round is like an online test. If he gets through that, then they have an interview, assessment day. If he gets through that, then there might be more, like another visit and so forth. So, but typically you would know by the end of year 6, which is grade 5, if you have a place or not. What this also means is that if you've missed that first point of entry, you can actually make a late application. So there are very often places that come up after that, but of course it's not going to be first dibs. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the main entry point. And then just in terms of the assessments, I mean, I touched on this. They generally involve an element of academic testing. This could be online and or written exams as well. There will definitely be an element of an interview, typically with a house master or an academic staff. There might be group assessments or group activities at the school. Yeah, so any of those might actually sort of be a part of the assessment process.
Mm.
And so what about across the pond?
Right. So I think the US system works a bit differently. So the system of like the application system is quite centralized. They have like what is like a common application system, though they might be like there might be different platforms that you use, but it's pretty centralized, meaning that like a lot of schools, pretty much like all schools have like the same deadline. Like they have format of like the applications. They require you to apply like a year prior to like your entry point. So this is actually the main difference. Say like if you're going into grade 9, you're required to apply when you're in grade 8. So a year in advance, like all the process would need to take place. But I'm not saying that the preparation process should start a year prior, because there are actually a lot that they consider, right? For the US system, they actually take a look at first like your numbers, meaning like your grades, the standardized test scores, which is pretty much rolling. Like you take the test like a year in advance, but whenever you're ready for the test, you go and register and take the test. So they actually look at your numbers first, and the numbers can go back to like 2 to 3 years prior to the time you enter the school. So you have to be quite focused on your grades. You have to do well starting like in middle school, like starting from grade 6, 7, 8, 3 years in advance. And they also take a look at your stories, right? Like when I say your stories, it means like how you're going to talk about your stories in the essays. You can talk about your commitment to like certain activities, what you like to do, narrate the stories in the essays. You're required to write an essay in the application platform a year in advance, but you can reflect back to like your past experience, like maybe 2 to 3 years prior to that. They require you to go like to have an interview, like a one-on-one interview with the admissions counselors from the school. This is pretty much like a deal breaker as well for most of the schools, because then they would really see like if the kids, like the stories that they tell in the essays and like what the teachers talk about them and like what is actually shown in the application would be accurate from just like talking to the students. Sometimes your numbers are not there yet, but the way you're like the interviewer may like you a lot, so they kind of like push you through the final rounds. And like so it's a lot of like I would say like it's pretty the essay the application process is pretty handcrafted, and the system is quite centralized. There's like certain deadlines for all those schools. The format is pretty similar. It's just that you have to start preparing for the whole process maybe 2 to 3 years in advance as well. Yeah.
I'll just float the magic number up for parents for the US is January 15 is the deadline, and then you find out March 10, all at the same time. Well, not all on the 24 hours of March 10, and then you have to tell them if you're going or not by April 10. So
Right.
Every school follows the same deadline.
Right.
Yeah, every school except for Anna. So
and there's no I think with the test with the numbers, like they wouldn't say like this is, you know, like the number. They might have that in mind, but they would say, okay, this is the ballpark, but we're also looking at your stories. Like, so sometimes you may see the students who get into schools with like maybe lower scores, but with great stories. Sometimes you have students with like 99th percentile who get rejected by all of the schools. So it's a lot of, I don't want to say this, but a lot of parents would say it's the element of luck as well, like whether you're liked by the school or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I like this this March 10th thing, because in the UK the results come out at all different times.
Yeah.
Like the school will just release it when they want to release it. And it can be anything from, you know, a week after you've been assessed to months after you've been assessed. And what it leads to is this very difficult situation where you might have an offer from one school that you quite like, but wasn't your favorite school. And they've asked you to revert with a response before you actually hear back from your preferred school. So there's a lot of kind of like a little bit of maneuvering and strategy required, you know, like how to manage that, which is tricky,
So would you say the first thing for parents is like keep an eye out for emails at all times?
Absolutely.
Keep the notifications on people
and resort to consultants to help navigate the process. Right.
Yeah, and build the school list in such a way that you might have one preferred school, maybe, you know, one that you think is going to be fine, that you're happy with, and then just like not too many schools. Because if you have like 6 schools, it's 6 lots of assessments, and it's also 6 lots of managing the timelines of when you get the responses.
Right.
The wait lists and all those kind of things.
The US is definitely, when you say like the moving parts, I think for the US schools, if you're applying to 6 schools, that depends on what schools, but if you're going for just the top schools, 6 schools could mean 20 essays. I'll say 18 to be nice, but it could be 18 essays you have to write as well. So for the headache part for parents would be like leading up to the deadline. Yeah. Okay. Admissions differences. I think we talked about which tests are needed already, but when do kids need to start test prepping? Maybe Stephanie can take this one first.
Yeah, so, you know, I think it depends a lot on the child. From my experience, some kids just have a very good foundation, and, you know, you put them in front of like a like a non-verbal or verbal test, and they just go through it and they can do it. Whereas other kids really, really struggle and they improve by actually practicing. So I think it's very child specific. What I would say is that you need to have your English and maths foundation strong,
Mm,
because that is essentially what they want to see. And you can start that very early on,
mm,
actually. So make sure that your child reads a lot, that they have a good grasp of like English, maths as well, that they're just keeping up with like, with the different like concepts. That's really what they're trying to test. And then on top of that, the online test, which is kind of like make or break for a lot of these schools, because that's what they use to cut off like too many applications. Like if a school has a lot of applications, they'll ask you to do like an online test. And if you fall within like the bottom 10 or 20%, that's it, you're out. So there's a little bit of stress there, but you can practice. So I would definitely say kids should be doing
mm,
that. Not crazily like 3 or 4 times a week, but they need to be familiar with the test, and an element of prep there is does
mm.
yeah. So how long does it take to prepare? Short answer is it depends on the child. Typically, I think you want to be looking like a year or two before the actual test.
Mm, mm. This is like the similarities that the two systems share as well. You would like they require you to have a very solid foundation on math and English. And I always stress this part, like with the parents, that no matter what, you have to be a good reader. Like you read a lot, a variety of books, chapter books, not just like graphic novels, but like the books that match your vocabulary level for certain years, because you're going to be placed in a very demanding place, like demanding system. You have to read a lot of books, a lot of textbooks, right? You are required to write a lot. So English, no matter what like type of student you are, like STEM, non-STEM, you have to read a lot, right?
Mhm.
That's one thing. And the other part is math. Like they require you to take like a very comprehensive math test. I mean, for the US system, it's called the test called SSAT. Like most, like if you are not familiar with the test, I would encourage you to look into the test because it has a very unique format, right? So there's like a set of math tests and also a set of reading tests, but also they require you to like memorize a lot of difficult vocabularies, like a lot of difficult words. And there's a study that said if you want to get a really, really high score, like a 90th like percentile up, you would need to memorize like 3,000 words just to take the SSAT test. So that what that said is that as Stephanie said, like at least 2 years in advance, but like with the foundation of like being a reader, being a good math learner,
Mhm.
I would say there's no time limit, right? Like you have to start now. Like that's because it's about like the foundation. Once the kids have the right foundation and when they are tutored for, like the specific format, they can switch around. Like with the test preparation process, like strategies, time management, and all that, like that could also happen a year in advance for the US system. But a good reader would be able to have high scores, like would be able to get high scores for the verbal section. A good math learner they would find it like easy to do the test. So that's what it is for the US system.
I would just like to add as an English teacher that there's a difference between your child reading a lot and then actually understanding the books. So also like this is something easy and free to do at home. Encourage them to read, but then also ask them what are they reading and can they tell you more about the books they're reading? Because you could have a kid who reads 100 books a year, but can only comprehend maybe 50% of the books they're reading, right?
Mm,
So comprehension is the key part when
mm,
you're going UK, US. We
right.
want you to read, but we want you to actually be able to apply the reading skills for something else as well. So yes, okay. I think this is the one that maybe a lot of parents are also curious about. I'm sending my kids so far away. we like to use the analogy here at EduSmith that you are going to buy a house for your child, right? It's the same amount of money that you're paying for those 4 years. So what kind of house will they be living in? I mean, Pijab, maybe you can take like, if you could describe it as a culture, as a new house and neighborhood, what is a US boarding school like?
I think so I have a lot of parents come like to me and thinking that, oh, the US is like less strict, right? Like people, like students have all the freedom they can have, like from seeing like the examples in the movies. It doesn't work like that at all. Like I would say the boarding school is very strict. Like they have lights out, they have like, you know, like study hours, where you can't really use you know, like social media or talk to your friends. You have to like just study. There's this detention when you do something wrong, right? Like a lot of these things are in place because they want to make sure like they can control, right, like the discipline of the overall student body. And they live in a dorm where like you have like a dorm parents like who would take care of your well-being, like making sure you sleep a lot, eat breakfast, you go to breakfast in time before the cafeteria closes, you have the all the mental support you need. So it's like I would say like the right balance between being in a strict system and also being in a system that cares a lot about you. A lot of boarding schools would say we have a pastoral care system. Like they actually like they like some schools would say, oh, all the teachers would know all the students' names, and they have like a sit down dinner with like a different like faculty member. They have like the headmaster would also like open a house on the campus and have the kids, you know, go party in there. So it's like I would say it's like the right balance between a very cozy and warm system, and also like the one that requires you to adhere to all the rules, right? um Academically, as I mentioned, like they care a lot about like how you can discover your passion and what you like to do in the future. One more thing that I would like to add is like a lot of the US schools would emphasize like, you know, like your leadership, you know, like students' voice. Like they like to ask the questions like, what are you doing with the good education that you get here to like create like changes to have like like a great impact to the community that you live in. Especially for international students, they don't really look for students who are like totally Americanized and like not knowing about your roots, your culture, but more like, okay, who are you going to be in the future, right? Like how can uh like our support system and all the good things that you're entitled to, right, would be translated into something like meaningful and positive to the community that you're living in the future. So that's actually the culture that is ingrained in the boarding schools in the US. And if you actually go take a look at like if you do research, right, like take a look at their mission statement, right? A lot of the schools would talk a lot about like, you know, you're here because, you know, we support you. We don't really make profit from the tuition fees that you're paying, but it's more like the endowment from the community, from the alumni that actually, like if you actually take a look at the cost that they invest in you, it's actually more than, you know, like the tuition fees that your family pays. So they would say this a lot of times. And okay, make sure like the students realize like this is the privilege that you get and how you're going to pay for it with that privilege, right? So that's basically the culture.
Mm. I mean, I think everything that you said is the same in a UK boarding school. There are rules, there are strict rules, there are repercussions if you break the rules, you know, because and everybody is living in a very small, tight-knit community. So they need these rules basically to like function. And I would say that a lot of the staff that work at the school probably work in different roles as well. So like, for example, your French teacher might also be, you know, your tennis coach, like, or sort of, well, not coach, but like head of tennis team or something. Or like your chemistry teacher might also be your academic tutor in house. So the staff will see your child in many different sort of areas and many different parts of the school. So they do get to know your child really, really well. I don't know how the US dorms are set up, but in the UK, it's a little bit school dependent, but we have boarding houses which are by year. So sometimes the whole of grade 8, the whole of grade 9, the whole of grade 10 are in separate houses. So your child will move from one house to the next, or they might have a mixed age house. So the house, like you have students in the same boarding house that are 13 going all the way up to 18. What's quite nice is quite a lot of schools now, they actually have like a boarding house just for the top of the school. So for the last year or for the last 2 years. So the older kids are kind of like a little bit more segregated from the younger kids. And that even goes down to the door, so the room that they're in. So sometimes you might share with other students of different ages in the same room. And that's very nice because it kind of like breaks down the sort of the older kids like looking down on the younger kids or whatever. So that's
Right.
quite good. The other difference I think between the UK and the US is there tend to be quite a lot of single-sex boarding schools in the UK. I mean, traditionally that was definitely the case. Now there's more co-ed schools, but it's still predominantly like there's a lot of all-girls boarding schools. Boys' schools, there's not many left because a lot of them have become co-ed. But for sure, the girls, there's a lot of all girls boarding schools left. And yeah, the other thing is like uniform. So, the British love their uniforms. So all the schools will typically have uniform until they get to the sixth form. Sixth form, sometimes they are now saying just be smart. So smart attire, come to school in a suit. Like it can be a skirt and a jacket, it can be pants and a jacket, like as long, so that gives them a little bit more freedom to express themselves and to get ready for university. So very often the boarding schools are looking at the last year or two as a transition to university, and they will start to relax those rules a little bit. Like they won't be so fierce on like when you can use your phone, because they're trying to get the students ready for life after school. So to be able to handle sort of decisions and to make their own choices after they leave school.
Yeah, I would say maybe for the uniforms, US schools don't really have a uniform. They will have a dress code though. And so it'll be like some schools are like, yeah, wear jeans, up to you. And then some schools are like, boys must be in a blazer and a tie and long trousers, business, like business full suit every day, right? And maybe girls can be in a dress and a blazer or a cardigan. And then some schools are very relaxed with that. So that depends again on, right, like the right fit. So we're looking at the right countries, but also the right schools within those countries because every school is different. And maybe your child's like, I would never want to wear a blazer. And some of them are like, I actually like wearing blazers because all my friends are wearing blazers, right? So take a look into what your child likes. So yeah. And then let's talk about this. We don't want to talk about it, but we have to. Maybe Stephanie, you could start with tuition, scholarships, costs.
Yeah, so costs for UK boarding schools, unfortunately, have gone up a lot this year thanks to the Labour government. They've applied VAT onto school fees, which didn't, which was exempt before. So we are seeing cost going up between about 15 and 20%. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But some schools are still quite reasonable because they're trying to save as much as they can and to pass on as little of that added VAT as they can. What I've noticed is that the schools with a lot of international kids tend to be more expensive than the schools that have a lot of British kids. I don't really know why. Scholarships. I don't think international parents are really going to be able to get much cost savings from a scholarship. They tend to be more merit-based, just an academic scholarship would give you 5% off the fees or 10% off, but it's more an honor, that you're a scholar, and they support you in different ways. Like, for example, they might give you additional tuition in some topics, or like if you're a sports scholar, then they'll support you through conditioning and extra coaching, that kind of thing. So it's not really going to affect the fee itself. It's more the scholar is going to be supported in different ways. Unless you are a needs-based, then you can sometimes apply for a bursary, although they tend to keep those for British citizens. So yeah, that's the problem with scholarships in the UK.
Similar problems too for the US. I think like not a lot of schools would give out scholarship or like financial aids to like international like applicants. And I think as Stephanie said, like some of them offer like some merit based, meaning like, okay, they actually really want you, right? Like you have some qualities that they can't really find in other candidates. And they might offer you some scholarship, but it's probably not going to be like a full ride one. Some schools would offer like one, like total like one spot for like the scholarship, like the full ride scholarship for international students. So if we're talking about like the possibility of getting the scholarship, it might be quite slim, to be honest. And if you actually take a look at the cost per year, room and board included, it would be like for the US system is like as shown here, like 65,000 USD to 85,000. That's the range, quite a big range, but it really depends on the school. And as Stephanie said, like it doesn't like it's not that the competitive schools are usually the most expensive ones. No, it also depends on the location of the school. Like schools in California might be like over the roof, right? Like because of the cost of living. But some schools, like the very top school in say like New Hampshire, might be lower. So it really depends on the location. And so yeah, so I would say it's already competitive to get into a lot of these schools, and it's going to be even more competitive to apply for the scholarship. So it doesn't work like the US college admission system, like where there might be more flexible in giving out the financial aids to the parents in need, but it works differently for boarding schools.
I would just add that there's not really a scholarship component in US schools unless they really do have merit money. But you can talk to the admissions officers, just straight up be like, this is what we can afford. Can you give us financial aid? And I would encourage parents to have that conversation before they start applying, right? Just to be upfront, and then they'll see, because a lot of the times the admissions office and the financial office are the same office. And so the rationale is, well, if we can't offer you the aid, we're going to deny you. Not because your son or daughter is not talented enough for the school, but purely because if you can't afford it, we're not gonna give your son or daughter the hope that they can come, and then they can't afford it in the end. So definitely take a look into that as well. So yeah. Okay, I want to maybe kind of almost end this with you guys, but not as consultants, but as moms, right? When you guys are going through this process, Pijab, I know you're not going through this process, but you might be soon. These are like maybe some key considerations that you need to ask yourself. So maybe I would like to ask you guys as moms right now, like, how would you maybe, like, what are some of your answers for this? And then like, maybe what are your advice if there's a mom or dad in here that's kind of similar to what you guys are looking for? Maybe you'll have Pijab start.
I think for me, I'm still confused, honestly. This is the irony. Like, okay, I know a lot about like the US systems. Like, we're in the process of working with Stephanie about like, helping the Thai kids get into like UK boarding schools, like bringing more resources to Thailand. But again, like, now that I have my own kids, like in the past, oh, it's so easy, right? Like the recommendation and everything, like, all the facts, like have them compare like the two systems. But now like if I wear a hat of like being a mom, like it's actually more complicated because there are a lot of factors that are going on in your head, right? Like safety is a key. Like even though you think your kid would be suitable for this system, they may not like it. They may want to be independent and like explore like what's out there by themselves. So I would say the first step would be to know these facts first, right? And then the second one would be expose yourself with the schools, like take them for a school visit or like go to BESSA, for example, the events like where all the schools are there. Talk to them. You'll find out like what their culture is, what they believe in. Like from talking to a lot of like school representatives, I find out that they actually have very different mindsets. You know, like some schools might, okay, we're very like academic focused, right? Some schools might be like, oh, it's like pastoral care and all that. So it like each school has its own culture and also like the system itself. But the big picture, I would still say like they're pretty much the same concept. You know, like taking kids to a very structured environment, having them like be more disciplined, having them have like the intrinsic motivation to do stuff that they like by exposing them to like a wide variety of resources and opportunities. That's the main like overarching concept of like sending your kids to a boarding school. But then like the details, like as Stephanie said, right, like type of learner they like are they like good test takers? Are they like more like okay, participating, discussion, and like do they know what they like to do yet? Like all of these things I would say are like little things that you have to start observing and talking to your kids like frankly about. Okay, what's your goal? Like setting the goals together, like asking for their opinions, and like just go with like being open-minded about the two systems, and you'll find out along the way which one would be suitable for your child, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you're going to laugh, but what I did was I made a list. I made a list of pros and cons of every school. So actually, we didn't look at the US, but that was more because I didn't know anything about American boarding schools at that time. I mean, my kids are really old now. They're in their 20s. So back in the day, I only knew about the UK, so we only looked at the UK schools. But I made a list, these are the good things about, these are things I like about X school. These are things I don't like so much about X school and Y school. And then we just kind of like weighed all these things up. And then when we visited, that is very important because I think the visit really gives you a good feel for the school. And while I was visiting, I would look at the students and I would say, can I see my own child being one of these people?
Mm,
And
right.
what it boiled down to for me was, are the students being kind to each other?
Mm,
And what are the values of the school?
mm,
So that and academics. So I think those three things were for me the most important.
mm,
And that's how we chose the school. We liked it because we felt like the kids were kind to each other. The values, I mean, like the school that my kids went to had some element of a religious affiliation. So
mm,
their way, they actually went to church on Sunday, which was kind of important for me because I think it grounds them, gives them that like the values. And then they had good academic results. So
mm.
that was important for me as a mom because I was sending them away from home because we didn't have a school with those similar possibilities where,
Mm.
so yeah, so that's how I decided.
Right. And there's no right or wrong, as I said. Like, if you find out that you're not, like, this is not a suitable system for you, then move, right? Like, I mean, for college, just explore different systems, like, because both systems would allow you to switch things around, move,
Absolutely. And
like, to
and
different
actually with
systems.
with the pros and cons, we
Mm.
concluded that there is no perfect school.
Right.
Every school is going to have something that you think is not perfect about it.
Right.
Like as long as most things are working out, then I think
Yeah.
that's pretty good. Yeah. You're,
Right.
That's good
Right.
enough.
I would say my thing would be never underestimate your gut feeling, especially as a parent. Like
Mm.
there will be some times when you just feel it in your gut and being like, this is it, or this is not it. And so sometimes, unfortunately, those gut feelings come out, like when you talk to admissions rep or when you go visit a school because you had your eyes and your heart set on this one school, and then you get to meet them and you get to go see the school on open house, and you're like, oh, well, I thought it wouldn't be like this. I really wish I liked it, but I didn't. But then
Mm.
maybe you go to another open house and you're like, I didn't think that I would like this, but I really ended up loving this, right? So, like both of Stephanie and Job said, really keep an open mind, an open heart, because you never really know what's gonna happen. And then and your child will be at the right place. Like just kind of trust in that process a bit. Yeah, much for everybody who attended. Obviously, we would like to, if you would like to go to BESSA, the event, I highly, highly recommend. Our team recommends it. It's a very fun event. You'll get to definitely meet a lot of parents during, sorry, parents, but also, admissions directors of those schools. Definitely go in. Yeah. And then and then our team has just sent the names of the schools that will be there, and then as well as the program for that day as well. All right.
So
Thank you.
actually, both Kunjob and I will be there on the 2nd. So if you want to meet us in the flesh, you can come down and we'll be there. And I'm very happy to, if you're looking at the UK, I'd be very happy to help you
Right.
to introduce you to some of the schools that are going to be there that day.
There you
Right.
go.
Go
Right
talk to
there.
them.
Okay. Well, we do have a post-event survey for anybody who's here. Please fill this out if you can. Sorry, the thing is glitching. And then if you have any specific events you'd like us to host, webinars, in-persons, lives, let us know. We'll definitely look into it and see if we can make it happen.
Mm.
All right. Okay, I hope that everybody scans that. And then, of course, this is our connect with us. So, ways you can email us, our website, and our phone. And then, of course, our line ID.
Right.
I'll just leave this up here. Thank you so, so much for everybody, and especially those who.
Oops.
Something happened.
I think Vera's got cut. But yeah. Anyways, we're
Okay.
all right. Okay. Thank you so much. And please stay connected if there's anything we can answer your questions. Bye.